Everybody, how's it going? Marcos Villegas for Fight Up TV, being joined with Eddie Hearn, who's on the ground in Arizona nonstop. He's promoting this fight, Bam Rodriguez against Gallo Estrada, as well as Boots Ennis, Cody Crowley, coming up. Back-to-back press conferences for you, Eddie. And also a big congrats on that Forbes list. You have the most valuable boxing company in the world. So look, all
Thank
smiles.
you. Yeah, that felt pretty good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess there's a lot of debate around that, but it's nice to get the approval from Forbes. It's a pretty good source. As boxing sources go, that's a pretty good source. But yeah, no, things are good. Obviously, this week we've got a show in Mexico as well on Saturday with Rocky Hernandez, and also Erica Cruz in a great fight. And then we're all heading out to Saudi next week. We've got Opetay, we've got Cordina, and of course you've got Fury Usyk. But this week's about pushing two of our really big cards. Bam against Estrada, June 29 in Phoenix. And of course, July 13, the homecoming of Jaron Boots Ennis in Philly. So really excited and a big week for us stateside.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards coming up with that Bam and Gallo Estrada fight. You know, Bam Rodriguez has knocked off two of the four kings in that division. If he's able to beat a Gallo Estrada, that'd be huge. If he wins, Eddie, are you seeing maybe a fight with Chocolatito Gonzalez for Bam in the future?
Yeah, it's difficult because obviously Chocolatito is, Bam still has his ties with Honda and Tekken, and obviously Honda has Chocolatito, and he's not really a fan of putting his guys in with each other. But like, there comes a point where that fight becomes really big. I think Chocolatito has a fight scheduled, kind of like a comeback fight, if you like. And with Bam, I think he's a generational talent. I really believe that. Someone that's going to go through the divisions. I mean, crazy that he was a light flyweight and ended up jumping up to super flyweight at late notice to win the world title. Then said, no, I want to go back down to flyweight because I'm not really a super flyweight. Then went down to flyweight, won the world title, unified against Sonny Edwards, and now struggles to make flyweight because he's still a young man. And now he wants to go back to super flyweight to fight, Estrada, and then even talks about going to bantam and super bantam, junior feather, 122. And I believe he can do it. He's still a growing boy, and I know that everybody likes their fantasy fights and looks at Inoue going up to fight Gervonta Davis, but I quite like Bam Rodriguez fighting Inoue at 122 or even 118 if he ever went back there. So I don't know, but like I say, this is a tough fight. This is definitely the toughest fight of his career. Estrada is coming off like nearly a year layoff, but it doesn't matter. Like, he's a pound for pound great fighter, and the run that Jesse Rodriguez is having is a serious shout to be in that top 10 pound for pound list, which I believe he is.
No, yeah, this is a heck of a fight that's happening June 29th in Arizona. But I was also thinking Inoue for Bam. He's having kind of the same route going up in weight classes, so that would be a tremendous fight. Also in Japan between those two. This fight that you have in Philly with Boots Ennis. Now, tell me the story of signing Boots. How did that happen? How did that come about, Eddie?
I was actually laughing to Kevin Rooney earlier, who works for us, because it's actually taken 5 years or something like that, because we actually had our first meeting on Jaron Ennis on the Canelo Danny Jacobs fight week. I remember it very well. And we knew back then how good this kid was. Like, there's no secrets in boxing. For the last 5-6 years, everyone talked about Jaron Ennis being, the future of that division and how much talent this kid had. And we kind of stayed with it. We got close a couple of times and we got let down. And, over the last year particularly, we've seen his inactivity. We've seen him become a bigger star. Particularly, we've seen him capture the world title at 147 pounds. And all of a sudden, he has a huge value for us, because I think when you look at our talent in America, we've got a fantastic roster, and there you've got a guy, an American fighter, undefeated, world champion, who can be in massive fights around 47, 54, whoever it's going to be. And, when the guys said, look, he wants to sign, I just sort of said, oh, come on, guys, we've been here before. And when he finally signed, it was a massive moment for us. And you saw the noise that it generated online and digitally. It was one of our biggest announcements. And I think it was the shock of the announcement that is sometimes so powerful, because how often does something break? Whether it's a fight, whether it's a signing, whether it's a TV deal. And that was one where we just announced it and no one really knew. And it was very powerful for us. And I think we're going to do a great job. I think taking him home to Philly, he's got his mandatory against Cody Crawley, who's also undefeated. It'll be a good fight. First fight at the Wells Fargo Center. I just feel like when you take a fight at home, it's a bit like when we did Haney Prograis. You know, went to San Francisco. Everyone was like, oh, there's no boxing in San Francisco. He's never boxed there before. We did 16,000. So I'm hoping in Philly, because they know how good he is, you know, and he's a kid from Philadelphia. So I'm hoping we can have a really big gate there and push him on into some massive fights.
Yeah, it took everyone by surprise because it was reported that Espinoza was his advisor and he had a special working relationship with Showtime and PBC. So yeah, it did throw everybody off. In terms of future fights, I know it was really hard to get Boots fights because of how good he was. Now that Crawford is doing business with Mr. Al Sheikh, that's the fight everybody wanted to see at 147 pounds. Can you deliver that to Boots?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only person that can deliver that fight is His Excellency, in all honesty. You know, Crawford's going to want a huge amount of money for that fight because of the risk. And, you know, I'll make sure Boots gets the right price as well. But when I took Jaron to meet His Excellency in New York, he made it very clear that that was a fight that he was very interested in. I think the good news for Boots, and I get the argument, you know, it's always like, oh, well, why would you sign with them? Because they don't have that division. And why would you sign with them? Because they don't have that division. Now at 147, I think the path's a little bit clearer. You don't have superstars as the other champions. So you've got Stanionis, you've got Marios Barros. Like, really, rather than us chasing them, they're now probably looking at the Boots fight as their cash-out fight. Do you know what I mean? Like you would do previously if it was Crawford or if it was Spence or those kind of guys, because I don't see the paydays for Stanionis and for Barrios really without fighting Boots Ennis. So I'm hoping that after Crowley, we can look to get that unification against one of those two and then move on to a Terence Crawford fight. I think, but we have to, you know, I don't want to, you know, undersell my guy, but we have to prove, we have to make that fight massive. So we've got to go out there. We've got to fill up Wells Fargo. He's got to destroy Crowley. And then you've got to get the people saying, oh my God, Crawford against Ennis is like the best fight in boxing. Because His Excellency reads everything and he's a massive boxing fan as well. So if he starts feeling what all the fans are feeling, we're going to get it, you know. And I know that from our side, we take that fight, you know, as early as autumn, winter of 2024. So, you know, that's definitely a fight that we hope for. But I've got to say as well, and I really mean this, I've got bad feelings for Terence Crawford against Israel Madrimov.
Really?
Because like whenever you're talking, all I hear is Crawford Canelo, Crawford Boots, Crawford this. Like he is fighting the biggest puncher he's ever faced on August 3rd, right? You know, people have been sending me stuff about where he got buzzed by Mean Machine and, you know, all this kind of like, I'm telling you now, if Crawford gets hit on the chin by Israel Madrimov, he is going to really, really know about it. So we'll see what happens. But I've got a real sneaky feeling for my guy on August 3rd. I really have. I think it's a really tough fight. So I think any plans that Terence Crawford has, he should just put on ice till August the 4th.
Well, knowing Crawford, you know he's not looking past Madrimov. But the other thing too is landing flush on Crawford because he's just so good overall, as well. But you know that is a very good stylistic fight. But just to get it correct, Mr. Al Sheikh does want to make that Crawford Boots fight. Then he said to
Jaron, in, you know, when we saw in New York, I would like to make that fight. I'm sure he'd also like to make Crawford against Canelo, and a whole host of other fights. But like I said, it's our job, and particularly Boots in the ring, to make people stand up and say, that's the fight. That is the fight. And trust me, Crawford against Ennis is just a mouth-watering prospect.
No, it definitely is. I think it maybe could get to the levels of a Crawford versus Errol Spence at the height of that. Moving on, Canelo Alvarez getting a unanimous decision victory last weekend against Jaime Munguia. Your take on how Canelo looked, Eddie, and your thoughts on the fight?
Really good. Like, you know, I think all the stuff with Oscar and stuff during the week, I think that really focused him and switched him on. to be honest with you, because sometimes it's just another fight. It's just another fight week. It's just, and I think Canelo likes that. Like he's not afraid of speaking his mind or having a bit of drama. Do you know what I mean? And I think that just switched him on a little bit last week. And I thought he boxed really well. But Munguia did exactly what I thought he would do, which was be really competitive, but just not be quite good enough, really. And, Sal showed I think Sal was very sportsmanlike towards the end of the fight, because I think he could have stopped him. And I think he sort of respected him enough to say that, and he's still dangerous, Munguia, but I think in that 12th particularly, it was you kind of deserve to hear the final bell here. So just shows that he's still a great, in my mind, still beating these young. And I think the difference between that fight, that was a young, hungry, undefeated, fresh fighter. So you can't really, that guy's a little bit, that was a young, hungry fighter. So it'll be interesting to see what he does next. I mean, we've got the mandatory Edgar Berlanga. I think that's a great fight. You've got a lot of people want the Benavidez fight. I think that's a great fight. He fights Gosvic and coming up, I think, in June. So, the train rolls on for Canelo Alvarez and still looking fresh at this stage in his career.
Yeah, you segued me into my next question. Berlanga was there. He was getting into it with everybody, with Caleb Plant, with David Morrell, singing with fans after the fights, but he was announced as the mandatory. From your knowledge, Eddie, is Canelo a free agent? Do you have the ability to make that fight with Berlanga?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, we have Edgar Berlanga under contract, so any fight with Berlanga, we'd be involved with. But I've got kind of two hats on, Marcos, to be honest with you. Like my something that's very important to me is making sure that DAZN is successful. And I feel like when you look at their schedule, when you look at the fights that they're airing, things couldn't be better right now. And obviously, they did a huge amount of buys last week for Canelo against Munguia. So I think, first things first, will the Canelo fight be back on DAZN? Now, whether that's on Amazon and DAZN, whether he comes to Matchroom, whether he stays with PBC, obviously, selfishly, I'd love to be the lead promoter of Canelo Alvarez. He's a generational great. I like him a lot personally. But the fighter that I have under contract right now is Edgar Berlanga. And I think that is a if they can't agree terms just yet for the Benavidez fight, I think that's the next best fight for him. Charlo's out the running. Who else is there? He's not going to fight Crawford. He's not going to agree that fight right now because Crawford's fighting August 3rd. So if he's going to go in September, the Mexico-Puerto Rican clash against another young, hungry kid that's going to stick it all on the line, why not? So, yeah, look, if we can work with him again, it would be an honour. If not, to be involved in those nights, but primarily to make sure DAZN have Canelo Alvarez is obviously extremely important.
News came out that Mr. Al Sheikh said that he wants to make a Canelo Crawford fight for December or January. What do you think about that? Because Canelo has said in the past that fight doesn't really do anything for him because it's like,
I have to be honest. Like when I met Sal, he wasn't crazy on that fight. He just felt that you've got a welterweight coming up to light middleweight, going up to super middleweight, and I think he felt that he wouldn't get any credit for that win. Like everyone would say, "Oh, you're fighting a 147 pounder," but Crawford's really, really good, and I think style-wise, I think Sal likes fighting now. Like I think that's why I think he liked the Munguia fight, because he knew there was a guy that would come at him, would attack him. He's not going to be moving around. He's not going to be chasing him around the ring. I don't think he's mad on those kind of fights. So look, as Sal has made it very, very clear, money is pretty much the only motivator for him right now. I guess the challenge as well, but he was pretty honest in that respect, wasn't he? That if the money's right, I'll do anything. And I think if the money's right, honestly, he will fight anyone. But I don't think Crawford's a guy that he would necessarily be picking. I think he'd pick Benavidez over Crawford because I think he knows he'd get the credit for that victory, whereas he might not against fighting a guy 3 or 4 divisions lower. But, it's another great fight, another great option for him.
Him saying or being all about the money and listing a price that to many seems way out of the league of a Benavidez fight. Is that a good precedent or a bad
I
precedent
think
in
it's
terms of
quite
boxing?
clever. I think it's quite clever, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, certainly it puts your value right up. Like, whether he truly believes he's going to get 150 or 200 million, maybe not. But then does he end up getting 100? You know, and if he gets 100, it's the biggest payday of his career so far. So there may be a method to the madness. But I like, you know, I think one thing you have to respect about Sal is honestly his honesty. Like, you're not, whatever comes out of his mouth, you're not going to hear bullshit. You're not going to hear him playing with the fans. Like, he's just telling you straight. You pay me the money, I'll fight anyone. Like, and I think he knows that because of the size of Benavidez, and I also think he wouldn't want to put in high. I don't think he'd want to put in any hydration or dehydration. Like, so he knows that.
I hope not.
No, but also at the same time, you have to understand that he will be at a 10-pound disadvantage probably fighting Benavidez if that's the case. And I think he knows it's a tough fight. Like, you know, he's never once said, "Oh, I win that easy," or "That's an easy fight." But he believes he can win the fight. But he also understands the demand, and if the demand's there, he wants paying. So, you know, sometimes honesty is better than spinning you a story. You know.
Yeah, that's that saying: "Shoot for the stars, and you'll end up at the moon."
Absolutely.
Yeah. A few more topics for you, Eddie. You reigniting your feud with Gervonta last
Not
week.
my feud. I mean,
what happened? Feud. What happened?
I don't know. I mean, he's just another one of these guys who seems to be a little bit, I don't know, not obsessed, but like I've never had a bad word to say about Gervonta Davis. Met him a couple of times. Always love him as a fighter. But I think the thing is sometimes, Marcos, is that people gather the information and knowledge by people with an agenda or that want to tell you a certain story. So I don't know. I mean, it's great for me, to be honest with you. Like, you have to understand that the two people that are attacking me right now and are talking about me non-stop are two of the biggest names in American boxing. And that's Oscar De La Hoya and Gervonta Davis. So, you know, sort of behind closed doors, I'm like, you know, people are saying, this is great. You know, everyone's getting to know you more and more in America. Like, people, you know, if Gervonta Davis out there going, Eddie Hearn is, I'm sure there's a lot of people going, who is Eddie Hearn? And now they know who I am. Now, whether I'm a snake in a suit or not, you know, I think my track record, and if you speak to any fighter I've ever represented, will tell you very different. But it's okay. He's going for everybody at the moment. And I think he's actually doing a good job. Like, I was quite impressed at the Frank Martin press conference because there is no promoter. Do you know what I mean? So it's very difficult for these guys to sell their show because they're selling it on their own. You know, I'm not up there going, this is the biggest show to come to Vegas on June 15th. Gervonta Davis is the pound for pound #1. And this guy, Frank Martin, and like, so he's got to do it himself. And I thought he spoke pretty well. Like, I thought previously I've watched him at press conferences and he's quite painful to watch. And now I'm watching him going, he gets it. He's selling the fight. And, you know, I think he's going to end up spiraling out of control at some point, somewhere, whether that's in or out of the ring. I don't know. But I think he's doing a good, because I think he's a bit wild. Like, and I think he's just kind of free rolling out of control at the moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, just going at everyone. And sooner or later, he's going to come face to face with someone. Someone's going to say something. It's like all the Haney stuff, you know, where they're outside the hotel. You've got to be careful, you know, because Gervonta's the kind of guy, he's not going to mess around. Like, if someone pushes him or something happens, next thing, someone gets punched, they're rolling around on the floor. Next thing, there's a charge. Then, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you just got to be smart in this game. But I think promotionally, I think he's doing a good job. I thought he'd done a really good job at that Frank Martin press because it could have been really boring. And he made it interesting and he made it exciting. So I don't have any problem with him keep talking about me. I think the more he talks about me, honestly, the better for me. So I would like to officially thank Gervonta Davis for making me even bigger in America. Thank you.
You know, what's not boring is it's what's happening right now with this whole Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, drug test. You've read the latest, right? That it's the Ostrine, it's not the other supplement, that they're going to do a B sample, but you know, your reaction to the developments at this point.
To be honest, Marcos, I've had a load of stick from Ryan Garcia fans or whatever they are. Like, look, I've been involved. You know, I've had 2 years of this with Conor Ben. Very, almost quite similar in terms of tiny trace amounts in it, yeah, but a positive test, right? So I've had people telling me for 2 years, like, I don't care about the trace amounts. It doesn't matter. A fail's a fail. This, that. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. You know, I mean, to think that an excuse could be, and maybe I should have used this one previously, that it's an inside job or it's a conspiracy theory. And actually to have people buy along with that, this is not good for boxing, right? I like Ryan Garcia. I think he's amazing for boxing. But we have to deal with what's happened. And I want to also make it clear, I really hope that Ryan Garcia is innocent. I've never once come out and say, he's a drug cheat. He should be banned for life. He should be like all the people that are saying the same thing about Conor Ben and et cetera, right? So, but what we do have to do is actually acknowledge what has happened and what the process is from here, right? What we can't do is just say, oh, I had a photo with Donald Trump and this is why I tested positive. Like, come on, guys, let's just be professional here. Is cross-contamination a thing? Absolutely. Can you eat certain foods that could give you trace amounts of banned substances? I believe the actual answer is yes. But what he has done is he's failed 2 drugs tests for banned substance and he's entered the ring with performance-enhancing drugs in his system. Whether that's his fault or not, now we have to find that out. So, and I think that's the really easiest way to explain that to people. It's like the reason that you input, and one thing is the most frustrating thing to hear from people. And honestly, the most idiotic thing is, how can you let him enter the ring? Like he had performance enhancing drugs. If he did, they wouldn't have let him enter the ring. How stupid are you? The drug test is on Friday and Saturday. It gets collected, right, by VADA, the bloods. It then gets sent to Salt Lake City, which probably takes 2 or 3 days. Then it goes in the lab to be lined up with thousands of other drug tests from VADA collected around the world. Then it goes through. It was funny the other day. I actually received a result the same day or 2 days after this all came out. I received a negative test result from Joe Caldina, right? From April the 20th, which was actually the same day. But people think that you should literally take blood and then go, yeah, he's fine. And then people say, well, what's the point of testing on fight day or the day before? Because you need to know. You can't just go, oh, well, we'll forget about it 4 days out because you won't get the results back in time. You need to know if a fighter has taken something during that period to help them cut weight or help them make it into a fight. So there's nothing shady about when the results come back or how the sample was taken. That's all stuff for his lawyer. Now, as I've said before, I really hope that Ryan Garcia did not take performance enhancing drugs. And is there a chance he's telling the truth? Absolutely. I don't know him well enough to judge. I've been through this with Conor, where I've talked to him about it 50 times. And I've had to stand on my heart and say, I'm sure this kid did not take performance enhancing drugs. And I'm sure people around Ryan will say the same thing. But Conor's had 2 years of having to fight, through 3 or 4 hearings, through people just telling him he's a cheat. So it just can't be, it's an inside job. Because that's the most ridiculous thing in the world.
I think he's saying because of Victor Conti's affiliation with VADA.
But that's with all due respect as well, yeah. I can't stand Victor Conte. Right? I don't like the guy at all. He's badmouthed me for 2 years. I don't like his history. Now, if you speak to VADA, he's not actually involved with VADA. I think he's done some consultancy in the past because he knows a huge amount about the subject. But honestly, to think that someone would put something in someone's sample at a company like that, it's a ridiculous thing. Now, I give him the benefit of the doubt in the respect of it maybe got into your system unknowingly, okay? But you still entered the ring with performance enhancing drugs in your body. And that's where Devin now looks at it and goes, hang on a minute, I was 3.5 pounds over. He was 3.5 pounds over, and he had performance enhancing drugs in his system. Like, guys, I don't feel like this is fair. I get Devin. Like, Devin's, also, you've got, there was a situation recently, I believe, with one of our other fights where Joel Cusimano fought Adam Konecki, and he tested positive on the night. And it's only now, I believe it's just come to a head now. Like, these things are going to take 6 months beyond to get to the bottom of it. I think that fight ended up being a no contest. And I expect fully, like Devin, I think Devin wants him disqualified from the fight. I'll be honest, I don't see how you can be given a win when you didn't win. I don't know. But certainly the no contest thing, I think, is an absolute, like, even if it's found that there was contamination in his body, or, he still entered the ring with it in his system. So I think the no contest thing is an absolute given. I don't think it really matters now. I mean, you know what I mean? But I don't know. It's a tough one for Ryan, because you have to go through this process now. And that's why he's instructed lawyers. He'll open the B sample. As we know, the B sample will come back the same, like, unless there was contamination in the lab, which can happen, but very, very unlikely. And then now he's got to go through his diet. But when you're coming out saying, no, I was high going into the ring, and I was smoking weed all day, and I was drinking like all week, like, you've got to be careful, because at some point you're going to have to present all these facts to the New York State Athletic Commission, and they're going to be the ones that rule on it. I think sometimes fans in boxing as well, they don't quite understand. Like, I'm not going to make a decision on this. Golden Boy aren't going to make. DAZN aren't going to make a decision on this. VADA aren't. It'll be the New York State Athletic Commission, and they will look at all the facts, and then they'll make a decision. And ultimately, probably, the decision will be a no contest and a ban of some sort. Now, whether that ban's 6 months or a year, like, I don't think the ban's going to put him out of boxing for a long time. But what we can't do is employ these companies like VADA. Like, even like people say to me, oh, well, you're just ignoring VADA with Conor Benn. No, we're not. We went through the British Boxing Board of Control Commission. We went through a WBC hearing. We went through a UCAD hearing twice. And we're still going. Do you know what I mean? So we're not ignoring anything. And this is the same with this. We can't just say it's a conspiracy. Like, and I truly hope, and I think everybody should be given the benefit of doubt, but it doesn't take away from what's happened. So let's try and find out if he was unlucky rather than he cheated. Because if he knowingly cheated, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, it's a tricky subject, because
I feel like, Marcos, honestly, like, I'm the most qualified person to talk about this. Seriously, like, because I've been on both sides so many times, and I've been so deep. I've been on Ryan Garcia's side in his position with a fighter, like, and I've been there for 2 years, and I've done 1,000 interviews. I've spoke to lawyers 100 times. I've spoke to laboratories, doctors, experts, scientists. Like, I know what I'm talking about, and there is a chance that he was unlucky. There's also a chance he cheated. So he now has to prove it was the first one.
Yeah, with the trace amounts, I think the impetus is going to be on him too, to make a case that, hey, look, if it was a trace amount, this does not give me an advantage in the ring whatsoever.
But also, Marcos,
yeah,
I listen, and I hope you have the same energy for Conor Benn, because exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And that is why Chris Eubank's doctors looked at the results and they said the same thing. There is no physical, like, to what is in his system will not give him any physical advantage. That's not, unfortunately, for us and for Ryan, that's not the rules of VADA. A fail is a fail.
Yep.
And it's not like there's only a small amount. Now, what we've been able to do in the past is, because we got lucky in certain situations with tests around that tests, which would prove there is no cycle, because 4 days before he was negative, 3 days after he was negative. Why is there a trace amount in now? Ryan's one, I believe, was like 2 weeks. Like you said, you see, his lawyer said, oh, but 14 days before, 12 days before, he was negative. With all due respect, doesn't actually mean a great. I mean, I don't really know enough about Osterine, and people talk about it could be a weight cut, but make him white. Like, I don't know. And he missed weight, so obviously he's struggling, and like, I have no idea. And like I said, I like Ryan Garcia. Like, I really hope he's telling the truth. I really do. But at the same point, if Devin Haney tested positive on fight night, we can't just go, "Oh, that's a joke. That's someone that doesn't like Devin." No, we have to, unfortunately, instruct lawyers and go through the process. And to Ryan's credit, he's doing that. So let's hope there's a reason why he failed. But he still failed 2 drug tests and had performance-enhancing drugs in his system when he fought Devin Haney.
No, true, yeah.
And if you're Devin right now, you're going, what the fuck? Like,
yeah.
So
no,
hopefully it all works out.
The burden is on him to prove that.
Absolutely. I've been there, as much as I believe Conor, as much as we've got all it, you have to, this is the problem, you have to go to the panel. WBC heard our case. They reinstated us into rankings. He won the case with UK. Then they appealed. Now they want another hearing. So it's a very, very difficult process. And unfortunately, with food contamination, and then no one really ever believes the story anyway. It's like, the Canelo stuff is a real thing. And he went for a hair follicle sample, to actually prove his innocence. The egg stuff with Conor Benn, it's a real thing. But to the naked eye, people go, oh, yeah, meat. But the problem is these guys, and rightfully so, are testing so deep that, and also if you've done something in the past, like something this could be something that he's taken previously, and all of a sudden, because he's cutting weight, there's a spike in. I've no idea. This is what people say. So, but again, I'm on Devin Haney's side here, but you've never once heard me say he's disgusting, he's a cheat, he should be banned. But the process now has to unfold. But we can't just ignore the fact that there's been 2 failed drug tests on the day before and on the night for banned substances. So great news that there was not an additional substance, but you also can't come out and say, oh, see, told you there was no additional substance. It's like, yeah, what about the other one? Do you know what I mean? So hopefully it all works itself out.
You mentioned 2 things there that I was kind of thinking of in my head. Was one, what does Devin want the status of this fight to be? You'd mentioned no contest, probably no contest. Have you had a chance to speak to him?
Well, yeah, I said, I think he wants a disqualification.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
How is he, though? How is he with all this that's been coming out?
Not good. I mean, he wasn't good in the first place.
Yeah.
If I'm honest. I mean, this is a kid. He dedicates his entire life to the sport, right? He's a very, very good person, and he works very hard, right? So when he got beat, it was a real tough pill to swallow. And I think because of the weight as well, it was like, I just don't feel like, but tough shit, because he did the deal, right, to fight him on that weight. So what you can't do is do the deal and then come back and go, hang on a minute, he was 3.5 pounds over. Once you agree to fight on those terms, tough shit. You can't even talk about it after, as far as I'm concerned, right? Yeah. But he was probably like, was it a mistake to fight him at that weight? Should I have made him rehydrate, weigh the next day? I don't know. And then when that come out, he was like, but it's kind of like, he's still a little bit baffled. I don't think he performed very well on the night. And I've told him that. But he was still a bit baffled that he lost. Now in his head, he's like, how much did the extra weight, and I think the answer is quite a lot, and how much did the performance-enhancing drugs that were found, how much did that affect actually what happened that night? And we'll never know the answer to that. But in his head, I guess it's a little bit of comfort to know that it wasn't an even playing field. And let's be honest, one thing is for sure, it wasn't an even playing field. Like you can't, as much, even if you're the biggest Ryan Garcia fan in the world, you have to acknowledge that. So I've got to be honest, like with the failed tests, he took a lot of punishment that night. You know what I'm saying? And I think if you go through that kind of punishment and someone fails those tests, he's taken it extremely personally to the point where I don't even know if he'd want to fight him again. Like, to the point of, like, he's actually said to me, I could have lost my life in there, you know? And that's why I think it's important to go through this process, because if the fighter has knowingly taken those substances to do that, that's a whole nother ballgame. If someone's taken a supplement that they thought was, and that's pretty bad, but didn't know that was in there, or better for Ryan Garcia, he took something else that was contaminated with ostarine, then it's not his fault, and something terrible could have happened in the ring. Thank God it didn't. If you did that deliberately, and you got a fighter like Devin Haney saying, Ed, I could have lost my life in there. Like, I wasn't going to quit. And he was taking a beating at times. I think he's taking it very, very badly and very personally. So he wants to get to the bottom of it. He doesn't believe Ryan. I'm happy to say, benefit the doubt, one thing, but give Ryan his opportunity here to prove his innocence. But Devin don't feel that way, if I'm honest. Like, he's pretty disgusted about the whole thing, because no one can really understand what he went through that night. You know, he got knocked down 3 times, 4 times. Like, he kept getting up. His face was like this. Like, he took a beating at times in that fight. And if you got a guy that came in considerably overweight and failed those tests, what do you expect him to feel? In all honesty, happy, relieved. You know, he's very, very angry.
You would think, though, because he's angry, he'd want to get back in there with him. But I also see
thought
too,
that, but
yeah.
he's like, I won't speak for him. I'm sure he'll, but he's almost like, Ed, do you realise what he did to me? Like, I don't want to know that, but like, he actually wants to do something worse than just put the gloves back on and do 12 rounds. But as the promoter in me would say, well, that lends itself to a massive rematch. It's just a very raw right now. And I hope we can just get some common sense among everyone and just say, rather than this whole, let's do a rap video about why this is a conspiracy theory, let's just actually try and get boxing back on track. And hopefully Ryan can find a reason why this has happened. Yeah,
only time will tell. And time is going to show who's right and who's wrong as well. Eddie, as always, thank you for the time. I appreciate it. Losing my voice. I apologize as well. But thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Take care.